Many people hear the name Theodore Roosevelt and associate him as the 26th President of the United States. While this is true, that is only one aspect of his unbelievable life. As you'll soon learn, Theodore Roosevelt had a huge ego, held many jobs, authored dozens of books, and lived larger than life. Theodore Roosevelt was born on October 27, 1858. Here's a picture of him at 7 years old. At 7 years old, he watched Abraham Lincoln's funeral procession from an upstairs window of his grandfather's house on Union Square, New York City. Roosevelt was a very sick and weak little boy. He had bad asthma. Because of this, he was homeschooled. His dad took no pity on his weakness. He built a gym in their house and made Teddy lift weights, and he taught him to box. Teddy soon overcame his weakness and became physically strong. This is a yearbook picture of Roosevelt at Harvard University, the college he attended. His classmates thought he was odd and weird. In 1880, Roosevelt graduated with honors. The same year, he married Alice Hathaway Lee, whom he met at Harvard. Also in 1880, he became interested in politics and joined the Republican Party. In 1881, Roosevelt became the youngest man ever elected to the New York State Assembly. In 1882, he wrote The War of 1812, which established him as a serious historian. The book became part of Naval Cadet curriculum because of its insight to war and battle. In 1882, he joined the National Guard. He would be promoted to captain the following year. In 1883 to 1884, he established 2 cattle ranches in North Dakota. It was here he suffered the biggest tragedy of his life. On Valentine's Day in 1884, his mother died of typhoid fever. Just hours later, in the same house, his wife died of kidney infection. Here's a picture of his diary entry that day where he states, "The light has gone out of my life." 2 years later, in 1886, he remarries to Edith Kermit Carroll in London. Together, they took up residency in Sagamore Hill, New York. They eventually had 5 children. Next, he became president of the Board of Police Commissioners in New York City. Roosevelt received national press attention for his reforms, including midnight rambles and search of policemen not at their posts. Furthermore, he ordered that all police officers must report for target practice, thus establishing the foundation of Police Academy, one of the first in the country. Because the U.S. Army was weak in 1898 and left with little manpower after the Civil War, President McKinley called upon 1,250 volunteers, mainly college athletes, cowboys, and ranchers, to assist in the current war efforts. Known as the Rough Riders, Roosevelt's unit of unique volunteers were the only ones of its kind to see military actions in the Spanish-American War. Because of his popularity, the same year he was elected governor of New York State, followed by Vice President of the United States, chosen by William McKinley in 1901. On September 6, 1901, President William McKinley was shot and killed. Immediately at 42 years of age, Theodore Roosevelt became the youngest president ever. He was sworn in as the 26th President of the United States. Theodore Roosevelt was president from 1901 until 1909. He was considered the first modern president because he significantly expanded the influence and power of the executive office. From the Civil War to the turn of the 20th century, the seat of power in the national government resided in the U.S. Congress. Beginning in the 1880s, the executive branch gradually increased its power. Roosevelt seized on this trend, believing that the president had the right to use all powers except those that were specifically denied him to accomplish his goals. As a result, the president, rather than Congress or the political parties, became the center of the American political arena. As president, Roosevelt challenged the ideas of limited government and individualism. Instead, he advocated government regulation to achieve social and economic justice. He used executive orders to accomplish his goals, especially in conservation, and waged an aggressive foreign policy. He was also an extremely popular president and the first to use the media to appeal directly to people, bypassing the political parties and career politicians. He became popular for coining the phrases "square deal" and the saying "speak softly and carry a big stick." Immediately after his presidency in March of 1909 was perhaps one of the more bizarre parts of Roosevelt's life. He traveled to East Africa and to the jungles of the Congo on a safari. Roosevelt's goal was to hunt for animals that could be used in the name of science. The animals would be on display at the Smithsonian Institute and the American Museum of Natural History in New York. Armed with dozens of guns and 4 tons of salt to preserve animal hides, Roosevelt killed and trapped over 11,000 animals, from insects and moles to elephants and hippos. To those that object the killing of animals, Roosevelt said, "I can be condemned only if the existence of the National Museum, the American Museum of Natural History, and all similar zoological institutions are to be condemned." Upon return from a safari, Roosevelt just could not stay away from politics. He was unhappy with current President Taft, shown here, so he decided he wanted to run for president again. Unable to gain the Republican nomination, he decided to create his own political party, the Progressive Party, later nicknamed the Bull Moose Party. While campaigning for president, an assassination attempt was made on Roosevelt. As he was getting into his vehicle, he paused to wave goodbye to the crowd. It was at this time Roosevelt was shot in the chest at close range. Several moments went by before Roosevelt even realized he had been shot, but unbelievably, he went on to deliver a 90-minute speech. He stated, "It takes more than that to kill a bull moose." Hence the name Bull Moose Party was born. Roosevelt was lucky. The bullet's impact was softened by his glasses case in the pages of his speech, shown here. In fact, he never even had the bullet removed. You can see from this x-ray of his chest. Roosevelt ended up losing the election of 1912. He went on to live 7 more years before he died in his sleep on January 6, 1919, at age 60. This is a picture of his funeral procession in the grave site of his final resting place in Oyster Bay, New York.
It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming, but who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself worthy of cause, who at the best knows, in the end, the triumph of high achievement, and at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. Woo! Woo! Yeah.